On TikTok, I had published a video that was showcasing the Copic markers that I spoke about. And so there was a little bit of a continuation in there where, well, I can show you right here, a small clip of it. And this particular gentleman had a very valid point. It was the whole point, which is I guess going to kind of take over this video, is that Hobby Lobby is a unique and very odd thing to talk about for me. So one of the things that gets me about it is that for the most part, it has a line of art supplies. I think it's called Art Alternatives. And it carries a few other major brands and types of art supplies there. Early on in my art career, and certainly through college, if I wasn't buying art supplies at the UCM/CMSU art store, I would try and hit either a Michael's or something like that. Cold Snow Creative was another one, back when we still had Dick Blick, before it was, when it was still Utrecht, and then became Blick Art Supplies after it merged. The point is, there was a various amount of places I would go and get art supplies. For a very long time, the very first Copic markers that I ever bought was from a website called cuttingmats.com, I believe. I don't think they're around anymore. And they were the first place that for some reason you could get markers for, I know I saw the receipt somewhere. I think they were $5.65 and refills were $4.96. That was insane for me to think about, because it was just such a price break. Now I know that with the economy and inflation and other stuff like that, of course things change and corporate demands, whatever. But that was a very small, I remember that to order from that place, there was no online form. You had to either send a check or money order, or you could pay via credit card. You could do that online, but it was real janky. And so what I had to do was like email in my order. We're super old school. And that was a very strange time for me, because there was two couples that I did business with, and I loved their products and their services. One was for a company called Protect Your Memories 2, and they literally single-handedly sold the best sealer for artwork. And I'm going to talk about that in a different video when I talk about art supplies and stuff. That isn't really the place here, because there's a whole crazy history behind that. And hopefully I still have all those emails that I went through with that. But needless to say, it was one of the best sealing coat things I'd ever had. I have 2 cans left. The company went out of business a few years ago. But this cuttingmats.net or .com, whatever it was, that was where I was buying them from. And I felt really good, because I was supporting a small company, and it was like a husband and his wife. The husband ran the company and all that other stuff, did all the packing and shipping and all that stuff. And his wife answered the emails. It's really cool. And I think they may have had 1 or 2 other people working. I don't remember for certain, because sometimes I'd see a different name on the emails. But from what I understand, it was not a big operation. I don't think they had a brick and mortar store. I think it was all online. They had warehouse locations, and they would ship out like that. Well, the whole reason that I ended up making that video follow-up reply on TikTok was because I got asked, well, not asked, I was told, that, this acquaintance of mine that I know from there, and I appreciated his honesty very much. I was not offended at all by what he said, that, he'd much rather walk into traffic than to ever shop at Hobby Lobby. Now I have a few friends that work at Hobby Lobby, and I remember interviewing one time at Hobby Lobby, because I was pretty desperate for a job at one point. I had no income was coming in, and nothing. It was just a bad time in my life. And I remember finding out that, I'd have to do a couple of different things. I couldn't just work back in framing. I'd have to also be trained on the front, and that was basically it. And so I turned down that job. I didn't really want to be up front. I knew what the company stood for, and other acquaintances and friends of mine that had degrees in archaeology and history and stuff had said, this company's kind of sus. They're being brought up on investigations on, possibly being involved with like artifacts being trafficked and all sorts of things. And then I also read accounts of people who had been, within the LGBTQ plus range of, of thought and lifestyle. And if I'm stumbling over my words, it's just because it's so weird to talk about this and just think that even in this day and age, a company could be this way. And I think that it had a duality to it because I knew people that did work for it and shop there, and they were willing to look that past that because of the pricing. Now, I very much went, full on ShamWow salesman with my video because, especially in a time like this, there needs to be some parlance on this. The cheaper price point was also my way of being able to afford art supplies for myself, but also to have some extras in the event. I knew students, former students, other people that wanted them. Honestly, if I had had a bigger budget available to me, I have a lot of artist friends that would have probably bought those off of me, and I wouldn't have overcharged for it. I would have just given them the same price. They just couldn't make it to those locations. But I also thought about, all the other younger students and stuff that might be trying to find this stuff and get these art supplies. It's unfortunate that they were there at Hobby Lobby, but I also understand that like I stated in that video, I would be able to take what I got from there and do something more, something positive, something ostensibly better than what Hobby Lobby has done in the wrong. It's one of those weird things where, you have to stand with your morals and with your thoughts and figure out what makes sense in that moment. I know that that's not the only place that I've argued with myself on that. By the very notion of being a creative artist, any of us that are artists, what are we doing when we make something? We're making a thing. Unless it's something else like this playthrough that's going on here on the back screen. That's a video I did. That's a playthrough of a game I was doing when I was still recording my game playthroughs, and that exists digitally. There is no physical aside from possibly a file if I download it, and that only takes up space on a memory card or a hard drive. So maybe that's the most physical that it is. Now that is a creation. That is me playing through, narrating, talking about art styles in a game. And that's part of my output. My other output are bits of artwork that are on boards, illustration boards, wooden boards, 3D prints, different things like that. And I have to ask myself from an ecological standpoint, am I doing the smartest and best thing? You have to balance, the aspect of how long will this artwork last? Is it an investment? Is it going to be something that somebody would want to hand down generationally? At least I ask myself those questions. And I also think about the incredible amount of bullshit, like going back to this Copic marker set that I had showed in the last video. So it's got all kinds of things on here, right? It's got a security foil on here. That is a type of Mylar, I think. It's got this other security thing for, to prevent shoplifting. And then it's got this clear, I think this is PVC, clear plastic on the outside. Now that's going in the waste with these two things. And then, someday when these markers wear out, that's more plastic in the landfills, in the environment. Now they are refillable, which is exactly why I do that. And unlike people that buy a lot of other products that aren't refillable, those are just going to get thrown away. That happens across elementaries, elementary schools, high schools, whatever, all across the nation, all across the world. And I got to thinking whenever this came up as to, where's my stance on this? And I had done a video reply saying that, again, that I was hoping that I would be able to take this and do something better with what I got, capitalizing on this savings that I had gotten and these art supplies. Because I do often think to myself, like, for every aspect that's good, there's an equal negative to it. That is how our lives are now. There's a whole aspect to being an artist, and I'm only going to speak to this because I know that it crosses over in other lifestyles and careers and things. I get that, but this is the one I can really thoroughly speak to. When I create stuff and do all these other things, I do think to myself, like, well, what happens to the stuff that doesn't sell? What happens to the stuff that isn't popular? Where does it go? What am I going to do with it? I have stacks of artwork and old prints that are outdated. They're no longer the style I work in. Inevitably, I'm going to have to throw those things away. There are some 3D prints that have failed. There's other things like that that have blown apart. And what am I supposed to do with that stuff? It's sort of a conundrum because, if you don't, never mind just the moral implications sometimes of what we're doing, whether it's ecological, or dealing with the moralistic aspect of, well, this business, I don't support them because they're this. But then at the same time, they offer something for sale. I admire the people that can stand hard-nosed in what they believe and just never break they're just resolute. They're just absolutely, they know where the fuck they are mentally, emotionally, everything. And they're like, I don't give a shit how much I suffer or am inconvenienced by this. I'm simply not going to do that. I would love to be able to eat food that I grew in my gardens all the time. My garden is not that big. It is very small, and I don't always garden. I would like to think that I would be able to switch over to a vegan diet because I love animals, and I feel stupid every single time I eat something that is meat, and I very much am empathetic toward animals. I've worked around cattle, horses, chickens, and owned a ton of different animals, from ferrets to dogs to cats to a bird at one point, fish, and there's just certain things that, they affect me, and I'm like, I don't know where my stance lies in a lot of these things, and that there has to be some medium in there, right? There has to be some area where you kind of meet in the ground and you go yes and no at the same time. And what it ended up doing was putting me in a spiral thought process that I was like, where the fuck am I heading with what my decision making is? Because I would think that once I got older that I was more solidly built into my thinking, but that would be a bad thing. I like the fact that this comment was enough to get me to start thinking about where I was heading, what I was doing, and what the fuck I wanted out of what my actions were. If he hadn't mentioned something, I'll be very honest, I did think about it. Each Hobby Lobby that I went into, I was like, fuck, why am I in here? And I have friends, like I said, that work there. So it's not the people that work there. It is very much the company and what it stands for. I have a client. We were getting into a conversation one time. Now, I am very weird about this stuff. I have often started looking into paper alternatives, anything I can find. But the problem is, for what I do, I need specific paper alternatives that will be the right size, the right archivalness, or whatever the case is. And there are companies making them out of bamboo and other stuff. You can get different products made out of bamboo and hemp, very, very easily renewable sources. The problem is, if you start doing a deep dive, which can make you go insane, there's aspects with the lumber company, labor, entire industries. How do you reformat that stuff? How do you convince billionaires and corporations that, hey, this is better for the environment, when they're like, fuck you. I want to do it this way. I've been doing it this way. I don't care if the world burns. I'm 90 years old and I run this company. Fuck you. And I honestly think I have this weird thing that I'm like, I truly believe that the world is kind of in a shitty circumstance because everybody who's in power is older than dirt. And that's not a slam on senior citizens. It's not. I'm just saying that specifically the old, rigid, rich motherfuckers that are in charge, that have the potential to change a lot of things and make our lives better once new things are discovered, they don't really give a shit. And because of that, we could have different things that would work out much better for us, but we don't. I make actively researched decisions on things. I know, I'll give you guys a really good example of something. For a long time, I used to buy, detergent in a big plastic jug and be like, well, fuck, that's one more thing in the thing, one more thing in the thing, like in the landfill. And then even when I was recycling, started finding out recycling isn't all it's hyped up to be. We used to send most of our recycling to China. China was like, no, we're done with your American bullshit. And they just don't take it anymore. So I think most of it ends up in the landfill anyway, from everything I've been able to understand. And fewer places are doing recycling because there's no money in it. There's no demand for it. Plastics companies, fueled on literally by the fuel companies, are going to keep pumping this bullshit out. And they're going to sell you on this idea, oh, look, this number, throw it here. And if you don't, that's okay. Somebody else will recycle and become a park bench or something like that. The very chemistry behind a lot of plastics they're one use, maybe two, and that's it. There's not a lot more that's going to be happening with them. And they live in our environments and will outlast most everybody alive today. easily. When it goes back to the whole aspect of going even beyond the moral, the moral issue of it, there's this whole fucking Pandora's box of bullshit. And it begs a deeper question as to what is the responsibility for those of us who are not just creatives, but everyday people. What is the responsibility we have? Why? And in the last few weeks, I've run across multiple videos and different things that made me really think. There was a gentleman that I started following on TikTok, and rightfully so, he was really happy. He bought, I think it was $4 he paid at a secondhand store for a bread maker. And he was ecstatic because he was able to make bread. And he was learning a new skill. And he was like, oh man, this is fucking awesome. And then it broke. Now, the average person is like, fuck it, $4, throw it away. He was like, no, I want to know what the fuck's wrong with it. And also, why the fuck did it break? So in the process of it, he did get it opened. He did. And he even stated by his own words, I'm a very thrifty man. So I was very annoyed that when I started to try and look to see how I could open up this bread machine, I noticed that the screws were tamper-proof. So basically, it was basically a flathead screwdriver slot with a bump in the middle. So you couldn't take your normal screwdriver and do that. I've run across those before, and I just use vice grips to open it if I don't have that. He was like, no, fuck that. I've gotten lots of secondhand tools over the years. So he just cut a notch that matched the notch on there and was able to get it open. He discovered, I believe it was like a $2 belt part on the bottom, and that would get the components inside to make the bread move. I think he bought 3 or 4 more replacement belts, and now it'll last for a long time. And his video was essentially a fuck you to the manufacturers of the bread machine, that even though it made great bread, he was pissed he couldn't fix it. So for anyone that thinks that there isn't this implication that stuff is automatically supposed to be just thrown away and we live in a very disposable society, if you don't understand that that is the reality, then you need to be careful and look back to what you've bought and done and saved and thrown away. It'll probably fuck your mind over, because I know that especially when I journal and even in these kind of videos now and other stuff, the more records you have of what you've done, it's amazing how much shit we forget. And the reason I'm talking about all that is because even in that first effort, when I saw that those markers were for sale, the first thing that went through my head, budget. Oh shit, that's a lot I can get. And again, to restate like I did in my last video, that was like a 75, 80% savings. I mean, honestly, a gang of artists could have gone in there and cleared that fucker out and gotten thousands of dollars of markers for nothing, really. I mean, it would have been insane. Like, the only bad part would have been like, your tax write-off wouldn't have been as big, but it's still a fucking tax write-off. And then you can take that, so maybe you don't need all those colors. There are always schools and stuff needing things like that. Educate people about a product that by its nature is very reusable. It's enough to make you go crazy. And again, I am grateful for that comment, because it started me down this whole lane of thinking about where we are and who we are, and even how we ourselves are replaceable. In the grand scheme of things, the majority of us are absolutely replaceable in all corporate and company structures. Don't kid yourself. There's a video out there right now. I'm not going to share it on here just because, but there's quite a few of them that are always talking about the 40-hour work week and all this other stuff. And, there's all this bullshit that surrounds the negativity attributed to, quiet quitting or whatever. And then also, I think the newest one is like rage searching or something weird like that, but it's talking about looking for a job while you're at a job. And somebody decided to apply this label to it, saying this is a negative. You should really be focused in on your work. No, not if the job sucks. Not if the person in charge is an idiot. No, fuck them. I'm going to go find something else. Nobody owes their livelihood, their life. Nobody owes that. There is, honestly, and I'm going to be completely frank about this. I understand that if you are somebody that maybe picks up trash in a parking lot, and then you're somebody that works at NASA, probably should be some sort of pay disparity in there. But if you give 30 years of your life doing the best you can, cleaning up parking lots, working in the city, working for a park services group, whatever it is, there should be enough money, there should be enough initiative to get you to either management positions, or even if you're just a long-term worker that just didn't want the management aspects or anything else like that, some sort of fucking reward where by the time you've hit 30 years, they are either giving you an incredible retirement or you've just been paid really fucking well to pick up trash because you're either more efficient, you know the routes, people know you, they trust you, and you're good at what you do. That's why I get mad when people talk shit about people in the service industry and all these other things. And at the exact same time, there's a whole nother box that we could open up about people who are much more well off, criticizing people who maybe don't have as much money for going in and buying what they can when they can, or just trying to find some solace in something. I worked with a dude who this was back in Little Caesars. He didn't work a lot, and I understood why, because he was still going to school. But one time, a buddy of his, a mutual friend of ours that worked there, criticized him. He was like, dude, I don't understand, man. Like, you're always bitching about the fact you can't make rent and everything else like that, and you still bought this music CD? And it legit hurt his feelings. Like, he really got upset. And I was a manager at the time, and I was like, fuck, I got to work with both these guys tonight. And it upset him to the point where he was really hurt. His feelings were just really hurt. He was like, man, I am a kind of a fucking idiot. I didn't really need this CD. And he wanted to listen to it at work that night. So I took the first dude to the side, and I was like, dude, I'm not trying to be an asshole here, and you may not understand, and I hope you never do understand, because he's in dire straits. If he wants to fucking go buy a CD, and that increases the bleak ass outlook he has in life for just a little fucking bit, and never mind the fact he wanted to bring it to work to share it with you and me, so the three of us could have a fucking decent night while we have to deal with fucked up Karens and customers and shit. Isn't that okay? Now, the good thing is this other dude was like, fuck, I hadn't really thought about it that way. He's, I don't know, man. It's just, he's always bitching about not having money and how hard it is and everything else like that. And he's like, I don't understand why he doesn't work more. Well, he had a medical condition. And to this day, I'm still not going to repeat what it was, but he had a medical condition, so he wasn't able to work more. And it wasn't because he didn't want to, but he also understood, something that I didn't at the time. He understood he was going through a type of depression, and he wasn't capable of doing more. It was devastating. This is the very first time I had witnessed clinical depression. I did not know what it was back then. Now I sure as fuck do. So then I went to the other guy, and I was like, hey, I just wanted to apologize for what happened. I would really be happy if you played the CD. And I talked to the other guy, and, I think he's really sorry about it too. If you guys are cool, I'd like to just go through the night, and just maybe we can talk about it afterward or anything. It was like, no, man, no, you don't have to worry about that. He was like, I'd like to listen to the CD if you want to pop it in, for me and everything else. Because he still felt a little weird about it. I'm like, no, I'm serious. So I went and put the CD in, and we listened to it 2 or 3 times. It was actually really good. And I don't remember the name of the band. It was a type of music I did not listen to normally, but I still thought it was rather cool. And, it was just a nice change of pace. But the point was at the end of the night, we did hang out for a little bit afterward. I was doing paperwork, and they were off the clock. I didn't normally make people leave work. I'm like, if you want to fuck around, stay afterward and talk shit or whatever, or, buy your late meal and then make it in the oven, I don't give a fuck. Just clean the dishes. And it turned into this whole conversation where he opened up, to both of us more about what he was going through and talking about depression, and that he was on some medications at that point in time. It was eye-opening as fuck for me. I didn't know anything about it. And then the other dude was like, oh, okay, I understand. My dad dealing with depression a lot and all this other stuff. It was a wild and weird conversation, very personal. But it's one of those things where we don't always know what we're going through. Like when you look at somebody else, and the first action may be to criticize somebody. Or at least to form an opinion before you really know what the fuck is going on. I mean, fuck, I do that a lot. More than I'm willing to fucking admit. But I'm hoping that eventually I'll be able to get over that bullshit, and I won't be so quick to judge people. I do it a hell of a lot less than I did when I was younger, because I don't want people judging me either. But the honest truth is that we all draw judgments, for better or for worse. And so, yeah, it made me, the whole experience made me think I needed to do that response video. I'm glad I did. And, we were cool and everything. And some other people weighed in on it. And it's a weird and awkward circumstance. That was something where, even though I didn't know him that well, I felt more comfortable speaking to him about it and making a video reply than I do the people that I know that actually work at Hobby Lobby. Because, okay, this is what I was getting at earlier. And see, I put a pin in it and I totally forgot about it. A client of mine was going on about the paper industry and some other materials they manufacture. I was like, no, that's not what that's like. They were going on about how, the best thing in the world is the recycling that happens with paper and all this other stuff and everything. I'm like, no, there's not really that much recycling happening. Not in commercial industry printing. And there's fucking not. It gets thrown out a lot. It ends up in landfills a fucking lot. Because what a lot of people think is you can recycle any kind of paper. And most of you that are in the art world know this is a falsehood. If you apply any kind of lacquers, films, adhesives, special effects on most of them, you can't recycle that. It's not going to be turned into fucking toilet paper. It's going to be burned or some other shit, or it's going to lay in a coil bound to death in some fucking landfill. But I'm also smart enough to not argue with the client and be like, yeah, no, I like what you're paying me, so I'm just going to nod my head and just let you believe what you're going to believe, because there's no way, right? There's no way to convince somebody. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect all over again. It's this whole idea that I want to feel okay about what I'm doing. And I spoke to this before because I was absolutely certain when I still was working for Hallmark and they had me on that robotic arm for gem placement program, and they kept saying, this is going to make life so much easier. I didn't realize they fucking meant the CEO, because like when they let go of those like 28 people from the manufacturing plant, and my dumbass, the 5 other people are like, oh fuck, we saw that interoffice like web email thing coming through, and I'm like, wait, what? People got let go, and I realized that's where the robot was. I'm like, I am one dumb son of a bitch. Fuck me. And I will say that story over and over. Fuck, man. And I always get scared that like Hallmark will come after me for that, but I'm like, no, I saved all the emails from that shit. I knew exactly what was going on. It's not like, how can you lie about letting people go and, fucking putting a robot there for people to do that shit? It was just what it was. It's a matter of fact. But I was the one that felt like shit. And I often think about that, those repercussive actions that I've taken in my life where I've done something with the best of intentions, not realizing just how dire the other side of the coin was. And I kind of felt that way. When I bought these things, I'm like, well, I need them to make more artwork, to do things. The book World of Ardor and even Pagan Zoetrope are books that are based on not only social strata aspects, but imaginative kind of fantasy plays on what the current world events are, as well as both of them being deeply interred within the bullshit, like mental illness shit that I have and I've known other people to have, that I've talked to. So it was more of something where I wanted to create these 2 stories at some point where I would be able to talk about that and show people like, hey, there is more to it. Don't give up hope. So at the very least, I feel like the art supplies that I bought today will be definitely going towards something like that. And if I have extras left over, which I believe I certainly do, or if I pick up more, I'm going to be donating those and giving those to other artists that I know that need them or would like to purchase them, and then they can do whatever wonderful art they're doing. Because the grateful part I have is that I think 99% of the artists that I know that use these things are pretty open-minded and pretty accepting of a lot of things. And if that's where the stuff ends up, then that's okay. Because ultimately, anything terrible in life is hard to deal with. But at some point in time, something good can come from it, and paths can change, and how we think of things. What is considered right or wrong ebbs and flows so much. But at the central core of it, I really do believe that if we are trying to do the best thing we can, and it's for the benefit of not just ourselves, but others especially, so that, not so much that all boats rise with the tide, because I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But if it is something where we're able to at least help out other people where we can, or try and turn something around, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Ah, God, that was a lot to get out. Fuck. Oh my God, guys. Well, yeah, this was kind of an unexpected one to talk about. but I'm glad it happened and everything. And again, if you want to see the original, you can check out my TikTok. It's on there. It's the last 2 videos right now, and it was just crazy. I hadn't even thought about it when I did that. I was just like, fucking, it's on sale. Fuck Hobby Lobby, because I was so happy. I love Copic. You guys know this. I was so fucking happy that it got out of there. That according to everything I understand and the manager that I spoke to, they were discontinuing it in favor of their art alternatives marker sets, and they just wanted to get Copic out of there. And I'm like, fine, that's great. This is wonderful that this is on clearance. I get to support my habit. I don't have to give you as much money. I hopefully never have to step another foot in these stores again, and go from there. And again, that isn't a reflection on anyone that I know that works there. It just isn't, you know. I've worked places before where there have been people that are like, why would you work there? And I'm like, it paid the bills, you know. So thanks for watching, guys. I am gonna go ahead and get this uploaded now, and then start thinking about the stuff that I was going to put in this one for tomorrow. Till then, take care.